Welcome to the Tarot Coven Cast. Real people, real talk, real magic. Hello out there, lovely listeners, and welcome to the Tarot Coven Cast. I'm your host, Jasmin, and joining me on this episode, I have two of my lovely co-hosts. There's Jessie.
Hello, everybody.
And Elena.
Hi, everybody.
And we are here this time to chat about the sweet cards of the tarot. You know the cards, the ones that give you the warm and fuzzies, the ones you just can't help but smile at whenever they pop up. And we've actually got a lot to talk about on this episode, so I think we're just going to dive right in. So what are the sweet cards? Well, just like we talked about on the episode about the sticky cards, I think it's a really subjective topic. You know, everyone kind of has their own point of view when it comes to this stuff. There's no good or bad cards, but we all build kind of a personal relationship with our decks, and certain cards can sort of lean towards the soft or the spiky. And, you know, I think for some people, sweet cards can include things like the Ten of Swords, the Five of Cups, Death, and like maybe even the Tower. You know, it really depends on how these cards show up for us, what they've taught us in past readings or in present readings. And I think it can even depend on the depiction of these cards. You know, different decks will bring up different things for people. You know, for me in particular, I love the Magician, and very often when I see that, I consider that a sweet card. But if I don't find the depiction super resonant, then it's maybe not such a sweet card for me. I think there are some typical sort of sweet cards, you know, things like the Empress, the Lovers, the Star, the Sun, and pretty much almost all of the Cups cards, I would think. And we're going to dive into those a little bit later in the episode and talk about how we can work with those sort of typical sweet cards when it comes to them showing up in challenging positions. You know, so when you get like the Empress in the position of letting go, or maybe the Star turns up as a weakness. But before we do that, we are going to talk about some of our own choices for our sweet cards. But before even that, I just want to, you know, open the floor to you guys. What else do you think is a sweet card? Like, Jessie, when I say sweet card, what comes to mind?
I love when I get that card that's just radiating with positive affirmation, either for myself or who I'm reading for, something that just imbues happiness or positivity. And for me, the Sun and the Star both are just that representation of shining. And so I would say, like, top of the head, those ones are always good ones to see.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Elena?
So for me, I do think of like the sweet cards of like those yes cards, or like those cards that when you pull for yourself in the morning, or when you're doing a reading for someone that you feel like it may not be a good one, but then you pull those sweet cards, like those, oh, okay, it's going to be a good card. I feel like those cards are like the Strength card, or like something shiny and bright. But for me, I chose the Six of Swords and the Six of Cups. And it's because I feel like I have a personal connection with them, and I've learned from the growth of these cards. And so when I pull them for other people, I almost feel like a relief for them, because I kind of know like intuitively what to say based off of like my experience. And every single time it's always connected with that person, and it's always been like an aha moment for the both of us. And I feel like it's healing for both in that session. So that's why I chose those two.
Oh, beautiful. I love that you sort of tie it into like when it comes up for other people, it just feels so driven and so right for you in that moment. That's really nice. So why don't you dive into one of them, like either six? Tell us a little bit more about why that particular one, like maybe a personal experience with it, like when you first came to fall in love with it, and what's your favorite depiction of it? Which one do you want to dive into, Six of Swords or Six of Cups?
Six of Swords. And it's really tough because let's start with the depiction, because right away, you already know the Light Seers deck has been one of my favorites. Um, but I had to pull out three, and it's the Modern Witch, and also the
Hmm.
most recent one I just got yesterday was the Halloween Tarot. And I love that the swords are a representation, the bat is a representation of the swords. And anytime there's a crow or a bat as a representation of the swords, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
Because I have such a personal connection to the crow. That's my spirit animal for life. And so when I first started getting back into tarot and I would pull like a card for myself, I kept getting this card. And I'm like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to let go of? Like, I didn't understand it. Like, I didn't get it. And then other people were, doing tarot spreads for me and pulling cards for me. And this card kept coming up and I just kept ignoring it. And I didn't want to face the fear of what is it that I had to let go of. And the fact that there was a child in one of them, I'm like, okay, well, what is it that I needed to face? And last year in 2019, it was like leaving all of the things that no longer serve me so that I can step into my spiritual path and really step into what I'm being called to in this realm, which is one of the things is doing tarot and helping people find guidance through tarot. And so when this card came up and it was, oh, okay, I need to let go of people, it's leaving the person that I'm with because it that person no longer just suited my life anymore. And it was the hardest thing that I did last year. And it still is, and I feel like I'm still moving in this boat. And
Mm.
so, but it doesn't affect me anymore. Like I can look at this card now and be like, oh yeah, I'm going through it, but it's okay because I don't have to let these rocky waters, um, like push me towards, more, turbulent waters or the ugly path. No, it's pushing me towards the right path. Like, and I think like when people see this card and they see the ugly waters, no, it's not pushing you towards those ugly waters. If you let go and just, accept your path and accept that the universe is guiding you, like when you look at the light seers, it's like the crows are taking you to your path. So like when I pull this
Mm.
card for someone, I can tell them, girl, no, it's okay. Like you have to let go of what is not serving you because you've already tried it so many times and it hasn't worked. No, like I always love to tell people to journal because when you start to actually journal what it is that whatever the situation it be or how you think of something, like when you start to journal out how it's not working for you, you start to realize, oh my God, this is gross. Like this shit does not work for me. Like, how am I letting this control my life? And then you feel so good. Like, you feel so free. Like, I don't know if you've ever been on a boat ride, but it feels liberating. Like, it feels
Mm.
nice. It feels like great. And so when I see this card, especially in the Halloween one where it's like all fun and I feel like they're just on a boat getting ready to go trick or treating. Like, it's a fun card for me. It's a sweet card. Like, it just makes me want to encourage people, like empower people to push through their struggles, like, and to be that like empowerment for other people too, because things happen to us for reasons. And it sucks to say that because sometimes we're put in like the shittiest situations, but somehow down the line, we're going to have to teach it to someone. If maybe it'll be our kids, I don't know, but it's for us. It happens for us for a reason. And so that's why I like this hard card. And for me, it's not a hard card. It's a sweet card.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that you used the words freeing and liberating because as you were talking about it, it was like, yeah, you've pulled the card a number of times and have learned that, yes, this moving on, being in that space where you're moving through it can be difficult, but you've seen the other side of it too, and you've seen the release that comes through it. So you have been able to sort of recontextualize the whole thing and go, yeah, it might be a little rocky right now, but it's clear sailing on the other side. So it's just interesting to see how it was coming up as a little bit more of a sticky card for you. And it kind of, as the card shows, it sort of transitioned into something sweeter. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I love just sharing those insights with people because I saw how it helped me, and
Right.
I love how the universe just brings clients to me that have gone through similar situations. And then I get the cards that I've gotten through in the situations that I've pulled through. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is why. It's because I
Yeah.
need to tell this message. And then I can start getting the downloads. And then it makes sense to them. And so that's why I say like these situations happen to us for a reason, but then we can kind of start, it helps us to pick up on those like triggers or red flags when we start to see those cycles like come back again in our lives. And then we can kind of like shift away from it, and
Mm,
we know how to like catch those or prevent those or, to catch those
right.
triggers. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, what about you, Jesse? What's your first card? What do you want to dive into?
I'm going to discuss the Nine of Pentacles. And
Ooh.
I found that my relationship with this card has changed as I've shifted decks as well. I think visually we respond to certain types of art that our decks come from, or artist
Yeah.
depictions of what's going on. And it always seems to have, Nine of Pentacles in most of the decks that I've worked with it's a kind of a colorful card. There's a lot of life and energy and growth around it. And I love that it's really just usually a figure that is stepped into a power, just sitting really steadily amongst what's been created. And it's like there's this wisdom there, an evolution has taken place, and really it's about enjoying the fruits of labor and kind of where you're at. So for me, that's always just a great reminder of just appreciating everything we have. No matter where we're at in life and what we're going through, we have something that we can pull out that can be a positive thing. And so it just means that we've got so much to be grateful for, and especially with the gifts that we've all been given. And are we willing to just sit in that power and enjoy it so that we can grow and maybe even give what we have to help others. So
Yeah. Helps us come back to that present moment and just see what's all around us already.
yeah, and it's very much about what's been created, or what we're capable of creating.
I love that. Yeah, that idea of looking to see, like maybe if you're in a little bit of a moment where you're having doubts or something and it pops up and it's like, oh, but wait, I have already manifested and created all of this. So why couldn't I be capable of doing more,
Right. So much abundance in
Right.
the energy of that card. So I love that.
What's your favorite depiction of it?
Well, I'm currently looking at one from the Ashley Cook Tarot, and interestingly, the pentacle representation it's a coin, but it's got the knowing eye and a pyramid shape in each coin. And there is a lot of color in this card. So, and I should probably take a picture so you can put it on the links for the show notes. But
Yeah,
there's
sure.
grapevines, so there's beautiful purple, and there's a lot of pink and orange and yellow in the sky, and it's kind of a watercolor, but even below there's these greens and lush blue. So it's like the rainbow. I mean, now that I'm looking at it, there's a lot of color all around this female figure who is wearing a beautiful laurel head garland and has a very strong looking bird and a lot of life. So there's a lot of plants and leaves, and of course, with the grapes. So yeah, just so much abundance and color and possibility in this card, a lot of life. So that's probably my favorite depiction.
Yeah, it sounds gorgeous. Definitely send over a picture so I can include it. It's so interesting how there's always a bird in that card. Like, I feel like I don't think I've seen a depiction where there isn't that imagery included. Does that spark anything for you, the fact that there's always that bird there?
Well, I'm curious, Elena, on your Halloween tarot, what it is in the representation, but I really feel like anytime we see a bird, it is about defying that gravity or that position that we're at, right? Birds take off and they lift and they fly and they soar, and there's so much spirit. I mean, I do associate it also with kind of the wind and, the energy that brings. And I'm sure that, I've never even looked into what the bird, and specifically for that Nine of Pentacles card, what that means. But it's almost like it's resting there, but knowing that it can take flight at any time. So
I love that. That's really beautiful. Is there a bird in the Halloween tarot, Elena?
So there is, and it's funny that this is how in tune we are with each other, and this is how much I know. Like, I was telling Jasmin yesterday how I feel like we share the same guides. I was going to choose the Nine of Pentacles for this episode because I love the depiction of it. And there is a bird in the Halloween tarot. It's an owl. And
Ooh.
I love this depiction because it's her and she's in a it's a lady in a pumpkin patch, and she has a glove on, and she has an owl. She's holding an owl. And it's like all about what Jesse said, abundance, is knowing that yes, stuff happens in your life, but you have to count your blessings and remember to not forget your abundances, and not meaning just your finances, but your abundance in love and abundance in friendships. It's everything.
Yeah. Oh, I love that it's an owl. That's so neat.
Me too.
I know. I love it. This deck's awesome.
All right. Well, I have also chosen a Pentacles card to talk about, and I chose the 3. And so for a long time last year, I was pulling the 3 of Pentacles like constantly. And it would always come up in these interesting positions where it was, what should I move towards, or what do I need to incorporate more of? How can I let my light shine a little brighter, stuff like that. And for a long time, I was really resistant towards it because I'm a very introverted person who likes to do stuff on her own. And this whole idea of collaboration, or even just recognizing that, there are other people that could bring different talents to the table that I can't bring on my own. And I can recognize that and understand it, but it's just always been a little bit difficult for me to be like, no, I can do it. Or I can do it all on my own. I don't need anybody else and stuff like that. But once I started opening myself up to the idea of being more collaborative and looking to bring in people that have, just something just as unique as I have, but is a nice complementary balance kind of thing, a lot started opening up for me. So just even talking about this podcast, I mean, there was something that really called me with the 3 of Pentacles to join that first meetup that you put out, Jesse. And that's how we met. And then that's how I kind of met Elena and Jekanovia. And then here we are now. And so whenever I see this 3 of Pentacles now, it's just this reminder that you can work with people, you'll be fine. And in fact, you come together to create something so much more beautiful than I could have done on my own. Not that I can't create on my own, but this thing that we're building together is just, it has so much more power, I think. So that's the 3 of Pentacles for me. And I think my favorite depiction right now is the Light Seers, because I mean, it's a typical sort of depiction. It's 3 people working together to bring something to life. And it's just, I don't know, I guess it's just a little bit more modern than the Smith Waite. I mean, it's very similar. They're not constructing, it's not really architecture that they're working on. They're creating like sort of this patchwork type thing. They're all, and one person's hanging it, and one person is making sure that everything's in the right place, and there's another person still sort of working on, I guess it's yarn. Maybe they're doing some needlework there, but it is just such a lovely synthesis of things. And so Yeah, that's my Three of Pentacles. Thoughts, anyone?
I love that. I'm looking at the Three of Pentacles in my Dream Keepers tarot, and it's two figures sharing. There's this capped bottle with a moon inside, and each of them have butterflies on their back. But then there's this reflection in the water. So at the main part of the picture, they don't have heads, and there's pentacles floating in the air, but the reflection in the water shows two figures holding hands. So I love that collaboration idea. I think that's so spot on. And again, I'll have to share this image so you can see it, but how that's represented.
Yeah.
A sharing of gifts.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so Elena, do you want to dive into your next one, the Six of Cups, right?
So I chose this card because, it's the childhood card, but not only because of that, but I'm a child at heart, a big child at heart, and I think it's just the indigo child in me that just hates rules, that's really rebellious and stubborn. And the the biggest thing though, and I learned this yesterday during my Reiki session because this card has came up actually in more than one of my Reiki sessions. And it's that I'm always looking for that outside validation. I'm always looking for like the people closest to me to accept who I am and to encourage me and support me and be my cheerleader. But I don't get that. And so I learned that sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader and you have to be your own, like, you got this, girl, like you can do this, because some days or sometimes you may never get that, yes, you got this, you can do this, like you're doing such a good job from your parents or from your brother or your sister. Like sometimes it's just not going to happen at home, but you get it in the community of Instagram, and from from you guys and from my other friends on Instagram. And so, and for myself, and that's when I journal and I done a lot of childhood healing, and I've discovered that it's just not, that's just how it is in my household. We don't cheer each other on, I guess, it's just something that I've had to learn on my own.
Yeah.
And my favorite depiction of it is in the light seers because there's a puppy in there, but it's like a man, and he's he's had his life, but he's like envisioning his childhood, and it's like he's nurturing. It's like you nurture yourself, like you go back to the things that once made you happy. When this card comes up, it reminds me, okay, what are some of the things that I did as a child that made me happy that I can do now to bring back some of that happy energy in my heart space, So I'm like, okay, let's color. Or I go with Naomi, my daughter, and I build a fort and I get in that thing, and I play with her toys, and it's like, I act like a kid. I go outside, and I get in tune with nature, and that's the time when I'm the happiest, is when I'm making myself happy. And unfortunately, that's how it is when I grew up. But when I see this card, it's a sweet card for me. And just depending on the person that I'm reading for or what they're asking for, I'll go for like the deck. But the light seers, I feel like it's my favorite.
I also really love that card, and I'm going to be totally honest. It took me a couple of times of looking at it to realize that it wasn't just some random kid and his dog and then a random man and his dog. It was like, oh yeah, that's the same person. There's like a lineage there.
I know, right?
And then when that opened up for me, I was like, oh, this is gorgeous. So I love what you're saying. And especially because, that idea seems so simple. Like, okay, when we need that, when we're missing sort of that just, I don't know, basic joy, how can we tap into that? And yeah, like just go and play, go and do things that just make you smile, do things that would have like been the best thing ever when you were a kid or whatever. And there's something that seems really simple about it, but I think it's so easy to forget in everyday life. So that's such a lovely card to pop up as a little reminder, right?
Right. And it's actually popped up. I can't quite remember the question I asked for myself, but it tied to my daughter and how I think there was like a week I was kind of like so busy at work and then just kind of trying to focus on my spiritual business stuff that I was kind of not focusing so much attention to her. And it was a reminder, like, you were seeking that validation, like, in that attention. Don't forget you have a daughter who is the mini version of you, who is you reincarnated,
Yeah.
really. It's like, don't forget about her, you know. Is every time I see this card, it
Oh.
also reminds me of her too. So when I see it in the modern witch, I feel like it's us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. All right, Jesse, what's up next for you?
Ooh, all right. So let's talk about the Ace of Cups.
Ooh.
So I love the Ace of Cups because for me, I am not an overly emotional person, and even with physical attention or anything like that. But I love the Ace of Cups, that it is really about opening your heart to, you know, new dreams or new relationships or just something, a new feeling. So for me, it pushes me outside of what I would, my natural tendency. I mean, I'm a social person. I'm a friendly person. I'm super positive, but you know, just opening the heart and being more vulnerable. I actually really think it's a sweet card and can have a lot of reminders of how we have to be open to love and open to new experiences and things to truly grow.
Yeah, that's really nice. It's interesting to hear you say that it, you know, because maybe you're not the most emotional person, that it kind of reminds you to open back up in that way. That's kind of cool.
Yes. And I think it's also just about a reminder of good things and feelings, like fresh feelings, like when you meet a new friend or you have a new love, or just, you know, for me as a mom, having children and just that creative, beautiful, joyful, powerful feeling that we have.
Yeah. And there's something about all of the aces, I think, too, that, you know, even though we did mention them on the sticky cards episode of being like, sometimes you don't really know what to do with that energy, but then there's other times where it's like, there's just so much potential and so much promise. It feels like a really sort of sacred place to be in when you pull those cards. And then especially with the Ace of Cups, because it's just like, it's sort of warm and gooey and like,
Oh, I
I
love
don't
that you
know.
said the promise. I really love that.
Nice. All right. Well, so interesting that you chose a pentacle and a cup, Jesse, because it's the same for me. My next card is the Eight of Cups. And it was really hard to narrow it down to those two cards because I mean, I feel like people would assume that I was going to bring up the Magician or even the Queen of Wands, or like another card that I love is the Moon. But there was something about the Eight of Cups, like when I really narrowed the list down and I looked at what my personal connection with each one of them was. I feel like I've already, you know, talked at length about the Magician in our intro episode anyways. So with the Eight of Cups, it's kind of similar to what you were talking about, Elena, with learning to move through the Six of Swords, because when I was first pulling the Eight of Cups, it seemed like such a sad card to me, and it seemed like there was almost some defeat or giving up that was built into it. And then the more I pulled it, the more I worked with it, I realized that it was really a card of being able to let go and move on and move towards something brighter. Like now when I pull this card, I see it, I think it has like a little bit of fool energy into it, because you're moving towards something without maybe knowing what's going to come of it, but you're doing it anyway because there's just that intuitive gut feeling that is saying like it is worth it. Yes, you have all of these eight lovely cups, but if you don't move on, you might never get to that ninth cup. Maybe you're going to lose all the cups, but maybe what you find is better than the eight cups that you have. And so the way that this card showed up for me a lot, especially last year, was so before I really pivoted and got really deep into tarot and doing readings and all of this kind of stuff, I was writing about television, and I still have a podcast about TV, and I still love to write about television. But there was something inside me that was saying like, I think you need to shift gears. I think that you maybe need to leave this behind for a bit and move towards this new passion. And in a way, it felt sort of almost counterintuitive because I had worked so hard to build a name for myself, writing about television and building my own website and working for another entertainment website. And it felt like I had put in all of this time and all of this emotional investment into that project. And so I was like, am I just giving up? Am I just leaving it behind? Is this stupid? But there was just that gut feeling that was like, no, you got to keep moving towards it. And it's funny because when I would do spreads around like, okay, what could I expect if I sort of leave behind the TV stuff and move more towards tarot? And the Eight of Cups would always come up. And for a long time, I thought it was telling me like, get over it, move on, like you're being silly, don't give this up. And then I read, I can't remember which book it was. I really should have figured that out. I'll figure it out and put it in the show notes for sure. But there was a book that was like, it talked about it being a little bit of that fool energy and just trusting in that intuitive drive that's saying, no, you got to move away from this. You got to move towards this new path. You got to keep trying. And yeah. And I think right now, again, my favorite depiction is going to be the lights here because she's moving away from the cups and she's moving towards like this sun that is on its way to it's rising in the background. And so it just seems like there's so much hope and potential that she's moving towards. It's really beautiful.
I really love that.
Oh, thank you. All right. So I did have a little bit of listener feedback for the episode. We got a couple of people that just got in touch over Instagram to let me know what their sweet cards were. So I am so sorry. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right. I'm really, really sorry if I don't. But at Shwetha_Zaki or Zakai, again, I'm so sorry. But they wanted to share with us that the Wheel of Fortune is one of their sweet cards because it's shown up a lot for them when they were feeling really down. And they felt that it was a sign that, you know, the wheel was still turning and things could still be made right. And so they felt that it was a really good mood lifter. I think that's really cool.
Love that.
And then, we had at Scorpio Moon Tarot. They had a lot of cards that they love. There's 4 and 6 of Wands, the 2, 6, and 10 of Cups, the Lovers, the World, the 4 of Swords. But the one that they chose to give me a little bit more insight about was the 6 of Wands. And I love this. It's so funny. They said that they just in general love celebrations and celebrating. And then they said, especially when the celebration is for me. And then she put hashtag things an Aries says. So I really liked that.
I love it.
And then from our very own Jekanovia, I didn't get a chance to see why these were her cards, but I want to share them anyways. So the Star, the 6 and 10 of Cups, and the Fool, which we were just talking about. So that's cool. So that is our listener feedback. Thank you to everyone who got in touch. That was a lot of fun. And I'll keep putting out calls for feedback as we record episodes. Now, I think we can move into talking about those sort of typical classic sweet cards and how we can work with them when they come up in challenging positions. So like I mentioned at the top of the show, you know, when you are doing a spread and there's a position for something like letting go or weaknesses or things to sort of watch out for, stuff like that. So, I think... I'm going to throw it to you, Jessie. What do you do, let's say, when like the Star comes up as a weakness? How would you sort of approach that?
I usually, if it's about myself, it's doing a check on, am I being overly something, whether it's a control issue or being too dominant in something, maybe needing to let someone else take some action there, or even accepting help or letting others, contribute something. So for me, it's usually about that internal check to see, that temperature gauge of, am I trying to take whatever the beautiful positive things about that card. Is it something, too much of anything is a bad thing. So let's just see if we can dial that back a little bit.
Oh yeah, fair enough. That makes I feel like it's sort of the same with the sun too. I mean, if you think about it super literally, if you're out in the sun too long, you might get burned, right?
Right.
So it's that idea of like moderation, and yeah, just like you said, I mean, too much of a good thing can sort of slide into being a bad thing sometimes, right?
Yeah. Being self-aware, and sometimes we just don't take into consideration also how our actions, words, or plans are affecting others in that space. And so just being really conscious of taking a pause, taking that mindful pause, and just seeing if we need to adjust.
Yeah. And what about in general? So like, don't worry about specific card, but I mean, what do you do when you are doing a spread and one of these lovely cards, I mean, whether it's the sort of typical classical ones or, the ones that you sort of have that relationship of sweetness with, what do you do when they come up in those challenging positions?
Well, and it is very much, sometimes it just makes you stop and really look deeply within yourself. It's almost like it makes me take extra time to think through whatever the issue, question, topic is. And as I've gotten older, I've realized some things about myself that, I just had to do more work on. And so let's say it's the sun. That's a great example. I love the sun. I feel like the sun is usually a representation of me in a reading because it's very positive and bright and sunny. And yeah, it is a force, and I can sometimes be a force. And maybe if it's in the letting go position, it's about saying you need to just, take some rest or step back a little bit, let other people help or do something to move this along. Or maybe it is more about just dimming the light a little bit. Not that I need to not be positive or keep my optimistic perspective, but it could be just like, let the light shine the light on something that needs to be changed or adjusted. Are you willing to look, deep within yourself in those places, those shadowy spots, to, put light on it so that it can be brought up and adjust or acknowledged and worked through. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the idea of shining the light on the shadow aspect of it in a way, and just looking for other ways to sort of channel that brightness.
Yes. And the sun it's just all out, right? It's all output. And anyone who continues to just pour out will at some point be depleted. And, you have to maintain the balance and be able to manage, your energy, your light, your love, your gifts, and everything. There has to be balance there.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Elena? How do you approach situations where like those nice sweet cards come up in sort of those tricky situations or positions, I should say?
It's tough sometimes. It's tough sometimes because I have to look at like the other cards and see where I can find the connection. And it's like with the sun, and I like how you said, Jessie, about finding a way to shine your light. It's like the sun to me is like you're expressing your authentic truth, right? But it's like a representation of also the world around you. So it's like, how do you shine your light but not overly do it so you don't deplete your own energy? So I always remind it, kind of like I have to think of setting boundaries. And it really gets me sometimes. I have to meditate on it in a minute. Like, it's a good thing I do, I don't do live readings because we'd be here, for a minute. But like, sometimes I have to like pull my pendulum out just to kind of like confirm, what it is that's coming through. And then it reminds me, the sun, that's the light, your connection to to your divine power, So I have to kind of think, yes. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I like the idea of you calling in the pendulum for further clarification, because I think that we can do that with the cards as well, right? I mean, if we're really stuck on a certain position, pulling a clarifier is never a problem. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think it can muddy things up, but sometimes it really just helps. Sometimes I just think we pull that clarifier and it helps us see the original card in maybe a different light, or helps guide us towards why it's showing up in those trickier positions. I know for me, like when I see, let's say, the Three of Cups showing up in letting go, it's not, I don't see it as, oh, I need to say goodbye to my friendships, and I need to, not be spending time with people. But it's more that, okay, maybe that's something I've really been working on lately. I've been really working on connecting with those people that, make like my safe space people, right? And I've been working on cultivating those relationships. And now I'm ready to move into another focus. So it's like I'm finished with that energy, but I'm still taking the lessons of that work with me into whatever comes next, right? Like I feel like so many people see that letting go, and it can be a little bit scary at first, because it's like, well, why would I want to let go of Three of Cups? Like, it's such a beautiful energy, but it's like, it's just, you've done your work maybe, and you're ready to focus on something else. Like, you're not in a period of time where you need to work on that Three of Cups stuff. Or, maybe it's like, I often see the Queens as pretty sweet cards as well overall. And so when they come up as weaknesses, I guess, or in any kind of challenging position as well, I think it's kind of the same thing. And, it's a lot of like what you're talking about, Jesse and Elena, actually, that idea of maybe being able to pull back a little bit and I guess maybe internalize things a little bit more. Like maybe not that you should ever, I think, that whole thing of dimming to fit in, like you shouldn't be somebody else, but maybe how can you bring that energy internal instead of making it so external and overt and like sharing it? Like maybe right now is just a time to bring it inwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime there's that excess of whatever energy is around the card, I mean, you can use that as your, you think about, okay, what in the more of the, I don't want to say negative, but let's just say what the challenge of this, or what is, anything that's too much, whether it's the Cups energy or Swords or however, Queens especially, that can really help put it into perspective on what that lesson or message might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's great. I like how you mentioned the Three of Cups, because for me, that card did come up on a tough spot personally. And it was more of, don't shut out like your support system. Like always know that you're supported. Like always know you have those people that are genuinely there, that if you say I need you, they're there. Like it had came up in a tough situation, and I thought it was like, is it that people are like draining me and I need to like get rid of certain relationships? But no, it's the universe telling me, no, not only are you supported by us, but by the universe, but you also have those like-minded people that genuinely have your back and are here to guide, help you through what you're going through, because 10 times out of 10, they've already gone through it and they know how to help you.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the Three of Pentacles that I have out, and I'm just thinking now too, with that card, I think it came up in challenging positions for me too. And I think it was actually, it's kind of tying into what you're saying about the Three of Cups, but it was like, let go of that fear that you have of connecting with other people. Like,
yes,
there's a blockage there in terms of, you want to do it all on your own, but what is that fear that's standing in the way, and how can you let go of that resistance and that kind of thing.
And that's kind of like when the Judgment card comes in, because it's kind of like you're almost fearing being judged of your weakness, of admitting that, hey, I'm not as tough as I appear to be, or I'm not as I got it together as I appear to be. I'm actually going through, X, Y, and Z,
Right. Yeah. Well, anything else to say on how to work with these sweet cards in more challenging positions? Maybe I'll just throw out a card and sort of a challenging position and we can like work through it. How does that sound?
Yeah, great.
Ooh, yes.
Okay, so let's take the 10 of cups and say that it comes up in a position of letting go. How do you approach it? What would you say, Jessie?
I would start with, just saying, what have you held on to, especially with either relationships or personality that you're surrounding yourself with, just knowing that cups are our emotional base and that water, a lot of feelings and emotions. Okay, so talking about something at the end of that cycle, and that, yes, like Elena had mentioned, holding on to something beyond what it's meant to serve you, and really just saying, okay, this is actually finished and not in a place of benefiting you. And so while there's good and, there's been lessons that have made you a better person through this, I would say it's time for whatever that is to say, goodbye, bless it, and be grateful for the lesson, and then, let it go.
Yes. I also like to think of this as like, well, what current blockages am I facing that's not allowing this like happiness and joy in my family space, or like in my happy space, in my heart space? Like, what blockages am I feeling in my heart space that I'm not allowing these relationships or this happiness at home to? Like, I feel like that's another way of looking at it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess, so for me, sometimes I see the 10 of cups as a call to kind of shift your perspective a little bit, because so often I think that we see the 10 of cups as this, it's like it's the culmination, it's the end point of something. And that makes perfect sense. It is a 10, so it's kind of wrapped up with the numerology there, and it is sort of the end of the suit, at least before we get to the court cards, right? But sometimes I see it as like, how can we have those moments of like those picture perfect rainbow moments all the time, or at least more often than we maybe allow ourselves to? So if it were to come up in that like letting go position, I might say that, can we let go of this idea that we only deserve those 10 of cups moments, or we can only get to those 10 of cups moments after a really long road of something? Or can we say, oh, this morning I woke up and, it was sunny out, and that was a 10 of cups moment. Like, just seeing those rainbows more often. Like, how can you let go of thinking that it's only meant for one type of situation, if that makes sense? Like, you can consciously sort of call it in whenever you want, really.
Right.
Yes.
I love that. And I love rainbows. And I know we've talked about this, Jazz, how every rainbow comes out when there's a storm. And so just knowing that those rainbow moments, they come after a storm. So it's like, that you're going to be okay, even though you're in the middle of the storm.
Right.
It's not forever. It doesn't last forever. And I know after the tens come the pages, and I'm not too big of a fan of the pages, but they kind of remind me, of the Fool in a way, because you've gone through ace through 10, you've gone through all the shit that's been in the middle. Now you have all these experiences, these lessons, these resources. You're the page now. It's kind of like you're the Fool in a way, and you're, how am I going to get to this night energy next,
Oh, I like that. How am I going to get to that night energy? That's cool.
How can I embody this night? Like, how can I embody the night so that I can achieve the next level in my, whatever it is that I'm the next level of my life, or the next aspect of my life.
Yeah, gotcha.
So Jasmin, something that you said kind of sparked, I think, when that 10 of cups comes up in a position of letting go, there's so many of us at times that refuse to see the good in the situation, or give ourselves the the freedom to appreciate what we have. And similar to that Nine of Pentacles, but the Ten of Cups, it's like maybe it's just a reminder to count those blessings and recognize everything that you have been given.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, I mean, I think we're both kind of saying the same thing just from a different angle, because it really is just about like that shift in perspective and saying like maybe you already have those moments, like maybe it's all around you, and yeah, letting go of that sort of perception that it can only come at certain times. But
yeah.
And also remembering that you are, the energy that you put out is the energy that you bring in. And I think we forget that at times, and we need to those little friendly reminders.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we can move into our last topic here, unless you guys had anything left, like any other insights on how to work with the sweet cards in challenging positions.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about is how we can, it kind of feeds off of that idea of bringing in that Ten of Cups moment whenever you want, but the idea that we can consciously work with sweet cards. If we want to bring an energy into our day, into our week, our month, our year, whatever, we can choose to work with them. We don't have to wait for them to fall out of the deck. We don't have to wait for them to show up in the spread. It's like the ways that I choose to work with the Magician, let's say. I keep cards from decks that I'm not currently using. I just keep the Magician card out, and they're always just sort of displayed as I'm sitting at my desk and working. So that energy is always there. And that's something that I've chosen to do because I want to bring that energy into my everyday. And I think there's a lot that you can do. Like you could create altars for these cards. You could create spells around the cards or just affirmations. I think writing about certain cards, maybe like writing them a love letter in a way, could be really interesting. Have you guys ever done this before? Like, Jessie, is there a card that you've consciously chosen to work with? And if so, how have you done that?
I have a couple that I like to bring out, especially if I'm not sure about next steps. And really it's just about, clarity of mind. So I might actually pull out that Queen of Swords or the Queen of Pentacles. I love working with the aces as well. And very much about the journaling aspect. I collect books, and so I always like to see how people define different card meanings and add lists of those, kind of pull them all together and just pick out what's resonating at that point. But even creating a mantra, something that if I'm really trying to work with something, and that mantra being the statement that in my mind just, kind of keeping focus, that bridge between my reality and conscious world and the unconscious. But I think that's a beautiful way to work with the cards, or whether it's the Star or, like you said, the Magician, and just remembering the gifts. So I think that's one of the unsung ways that people can really maximize the meanings and messages in tarot, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that we just kind of forget. I mean, like I forget all the time that you can just go through the deck and pull out a card and say, yeah, that's what's resonating today. How can I dive even deeper into this? I think there is something, well, I was going to say, I think there's something magical about shuffling and having a particular card come up and it resonating so deeply. But I think there is something also really magical about doing something consciously like that and choosing to direct your energy and channel your energy towards a specific card or stuff like that. But what about you, Elena? Have you ever done this, and how did you go about doing it?
Oh, for sure. And I love it because it's a little ritual with you and your guides, and how you say, today I'm going to pull the Magician. That's your intuition. That's your magic telling you. That's your guides telling you that you have to do this because in that moment you need some kind of healing or message from it. So I started a little vision board in my space where I do tarot, and I have a picture of the High Priestess. because I feel like I resonate with her the most. Since I mean, I am her in the tarot, but she's came up actually in a few spirit guide readings as well as the Tempress. So whenever I am not myself or I'm not happy, I just pull out the High Priestess and the Tempress from whatever deck that I intuitively, my guides tell me to go to. And then I ask I pull a card on them and how can I embody their energy and what blockages are preventing me, or what can I do to get me through whatever I'm going through, like whatever emotion that I'm going through. And then I look at the cards as I pull them and journal and just try to figure out, journal on the emotions that come through, any triggers that are coming through, and then tie it to the now if it's something from the past. But because I feel like the High Priestess is that energy that I use to get me through the day, I try to keep a little altar for her. So sometimes what I like to do is I'll light a candle or I'll get a crystal for the day, and intuitively I'll ask my guides, what crystal do I need for my High Priestess energy, and then I'll just go through my little crystals, pick one, and then if I can't remember what it's for, I'll search it. And it's amazing how in the moment it's what you need. Rainbow fluorite is one of the ones that I usually is my go-to, and I've noticed it's my go-to when I'm my emotions need to be in check, where I'm either too emotional over things and I want to cry over everything, and when I just don't feel as in tune with my emotional self. I feel like everything is against me. But when I'm wearing my rainbow fluorite, I feel like I am emotionally in check. I feel like I'm that Queen of Cups, but I also feel like I'm spiritually guided and protected because I feel like I'm also embodying that High Priestess, and so that's kind of how I intuitively pick things for my altar. And I don't follow rituals in a book. I don't follow things. I just go with my intuition, and then I write things down, and then I research, and then it comes to find out it is what you need in the moment. So that's your magic. And that's kind of what I love about it the most of everything of, what we're doing.
Yeah. No, I love the idea that you just, you make your own rules kind of, and you just are going with what your gut is telling you. Yeah. Awesome. Well, and as you were talking about pulling out that card and saying okay, what are the blockages or how can I tap into this energy? That reminded me that I think another way to work with a card, to choose consciously to work with a card, is to maybe create your own spread around the card. So just think of all the things that, all the keywords or all of the sort of emotions that you're feeling towards that particular card, and then sort of shaping them into some questions and pulling cards around that just to go even deeper with that energy. But I think there's so many ways that we can do it. I mean, we can even take a picture of the card that we want to work with and make it our phone background or make it our laptop background or print out, one of your favorite depictions if you find a picture of it online and put it up, just kind of like you're doing with your vision board, right? But just keeping those images near us, I think that can really help.
Totally.
Any other ideas, ladies, with consciously working with the cards?
Actually drawing a picture. I love to just try to take my own little version. I'm not the most amazing artist, but I like to just kind of, if it was my own representation of it, what would that look like? Sometimes it's fun to just doodle it out.
I've always wanted to do a photo shoot to embody a card in the tarot.
Oh, cool.
What would it look like if I could create it? I've always wanted to do that. And I have a friend that is into photography. So it's one day, that's one of my dreams is to create a little photo. How can I make a real life tarot card?
Love that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm so glad that you guys brought up the visual aspect of things because my brain always goes to like, okay, how can I write about it? How can I, whether it's like writing a story or a spread or like a little love poem or whatever. And I never,
Ooh,
because
love poem.
yeah, right. But I'm not like,
Yeah.
I'm not a visual artist. And so that just never comes to mind for me. So I'm really glad that you guys brought that up. And I just have to say, when you're talking about making like a real life tarot card, that makes me think of, I don't know if either of you saw like when Beyonce put those photos of when she was pregnant on her Instagram, she was the
Oh,
Empress. I
hell
mean,
yeah.
she was like surrounded, she was all
Yeah.
glammed up, but like also showing her belly, and it was very natural. And she was surrounded by all of this like abundance and greenery. And I mean, that was,
Yes.
I think what you're talking about. And that would be such a cool project.
I really want to do it. And I'd be supporting her local business too. So
Right. Yeah. So
hmm,
fun.
I got that Ace of Wands energy right now.
Yes.
Well, new idea.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for the sweet cards. That was awesome. And we will be back with another episode in 2 weeks. But until then, Elena, where can everyone find you on the internet?
On the intranet, I am Mars underscore Elena underscore lightworker.
On Instagram? Yeah.
On Instagram, yes.
Awesome. What about you, Jesse?
You can find me at Tarot, 1T in the middle, on Instagram and on the web.
Amazing. And you can find me at the.written.witch over on Instagram. You can sign up for my newsletter there, and that's where all of the call for feedback for the show or updates about the show will be happening. So definitely check that out. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Tarot Coven Cast. Stay tuned for our next episode all about the full moon. And until then, everyone, keep making magic.